All right, everyone. Today we are continuing Unit 2, Colonial America, and now we are going to focus on some of the most important political documents in history. These documents helped shape ideas about rights, government, liberty, and the relationship between rulers and the people. But before we jump into the documents themselves, we need to understand something important. Most governments throughout history were not democratic in the least. For much of history, kings, emperors, and rulers often held enormous power with very few limits. People generally did not vote. Most ordinary citizens had little say in government. Rights were often based on social class, wealth, or birth. So the documents we're studying today became revolutionary because they slowly introduced the idea that government power should have limits and that people possessed rights that governments had to respect. Now let's begin with one of the most famous documents in world history, the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta was signed in 1215 in England. To understand why it mattered, we need to understand King John. King John was one of the most unpopular kings in English history. He inherited major problems, including expensive wars with France and conflicts with powerful nobles called barons from his older brother, King Richard the Lionheart. John constantly needed money to fund wars and maintain power. So what did he do? He raised taxes heavily. He demanded more money from nobles. He fined people aggressively. He seized lands, and many nobles believed he abused his authority and ignored traditional rights and customs. The anger against King John grew so intense that many barons rebelled against him. One of the nobles associated with resistance against King John was a figure named Fulk FitzWarin. Fulk became involved in rebellions against the king after disputes over land and royal authority. According to later legends and stories, FitzWarin became an outlaw fighting against King John's rule. Some historians believe parts of his story may have helped inspire later legends about Robin Hood, a rebellious outlaw resisting a corrupt king and unfair taxation. Whether or not he directly inspired Robin Hood, the connection shows how unpopular King John had become. Eventually, the rebellious barons forced King John to negotiate. In 1215, he agreed to the Magna Carta, which means Great Charter. Now, the original Magna Carta was actually short-lived. King John almost immediately attempted to ignore parts of it, and conflict soon broke out again. But even though the first version did not last long, it was still historically groundbreaking because it marked one of the first major times a king of England was forced to formally give up some of his power. That idea changed history. The Magna Carta established the principle that even the king was not above the law. Some of the ideas connected to the Magna Carta included due process, trial by jury, protection from unlawful imprisonment, limits on government power, and the rule of law. The rule of law means everyone, including rulers, must obey the law. These ideas later heavily influenced American government and constitutional rights. Now let's jump ahead to colonial America and the Mayflower Compact. In 1620, the Pilgrims arrived in North America aboard the Mayflower. Before leaving the ship, the settlers created the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact was essentially an agreement among the colonists to work together and govern themselves for the good of the colony. This was important because it established ideas about self-government and majority rule. The settlers agreed to form a political body capable of creating laws. Many historians view the Mayflower Compact as one of the earliest examples of representative self-government in the English colonies. Now let's move to the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. Created in 1639, the Fundamental Orders are often considered the first written constitution in the modern world. This document established systems of government where people could elect governors, judges, and representatives. It reinforced the idea that government authority came from the people rather than simply from a king. That idea becomes a major theme throughout American history. Now let's discuss the English Bill of Rights. In 1689, England experienced a major political event called the Glorious Revolution. King James II had become extremely unpopular, and Parliament eventually replaced him with William and Mary. But Parliament wanted guarantees that royal power would remain limited. So William and Mary agreed to the English Bill of Rights. This document protected certain individual rights and limited the power of the monarchy. It helped establish that rulers could not simply ignore laws or govern however they wanted. The English Bill of Rights later became one of the models for the United States Bill of Rights. Now let's move closer to the American Revolution. In May of 1776, Virginia adopted the Virginia Declaration of Rights. This document strongly reflected Enlightenment ideas about natural rights. It declared that people possessed rights, including life, liberty, property, happiness, and safety. You can already begin seeing connections to the Declaration of Independence. The Virginia Declaration of Rights helped influence both American constitutional thinking and later democratic movements around the world. Now let's move to France. During the French Revolution, revolutionary leaders created the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen in 1789. This document declared that citizens possessed rights including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and equality under the law. The document was heavily influenced by Enlightenment ideas as well as the American Revolution. One important connection many people do not realize is that the Marquis de Lafayette worked closely with Thomas Jefferson while helping draft parts of the Declaration. Lafayette had fought alongside the Americans during the American Revolution and carried many of those Enlightenment and revolutionary ideas back to France. Jefferson, who was serving as the American minister to France at the time, helped advise Lafayette during the drafting process. Now finally, let's discuss the United States Bill of Rights. Ratified in 1791, the Bill of Rights became the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Many Americans worried that the Constitution gave the federal government too much power, so the Bill of Rights was added to specifically protect individual freedoms. These amendments include rights such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the right to bear arms, trial by jury, protection from cruel and unusual punishment, and due process under the law. When we study all of these documents together, we can see how ideas slowly developed over centuries. The Magna Carta limited kings. The Mayflower Compact promoted self-government. The Fundamental Orders supported representative government. The English Bill of Rights protected individual liberties. The Virginia Declaration of Rights emphasized natural rights. The French Declaration expanded ideas of liberty and equality. And the United States Bill of Rights guaranteed freedoms within the Constitution itself. None of these documents created perfect societies. Many people were still excluded from rights and political power for long periods of history. But together, these documents helped shape some of the core ideas behind constitutional government, civil liberties, democracy, and individual rights that still influence governments around the world today.